It started on a blazing summer afternoon, the kind where the pool is the only escape from the heat. But when I swiped my access card, the gate light blinked red. Locked. Confused, I tried again. Still locked. Then I saw it, a notice taped to the gate. Pool privileges suspended. My name was right there in bold letters, as if I'd done something terrible. The HOA had decided I didn't deserve to use my own community pool. That's when I realized this wasn't about the water. It was about control. And what began as one locked gate would unravel into a scandal that rocked the entire neighborhood.
For years, I had loved living in our quiet, suburban neighborhood. Tree-lined streets, neatly trimmed lawns, and that community pool everyone loved in summer. It was more than just a perk. It was where the neighborhood came alive. But behind the manicured hedges was something far less perfect. An HOA board that operated more like a private government. They handled everything: the landscaping, the parking, the pool, even the shade of paint allowed on your front door. I always kept my distance. Pay the dues, follow the rules, stay off their radar. That was my rule. Then came Marjorie. She was the new HOA president. Sharp voice, sharper smile, and a reputation for enforcing rules like she was running a military base. Within weeks, the tone of the entire community changed. New restrictions appeared out of nowhere. No music near the pool, no food within 10 feet of the water, and a ban on inflatable toys. The smallest infractions led to written warnings. Parents stopped bringing their kids, afraid of getting fined for something trivial. Still, I told myself it wasn't worth fighting. Until one morning, I opened an email that made my stomach drop. Dear homeowner, your pool privileges have been suspended, pending compliance review. No reason, no warning, just that line. I thought it was a mistake. I paid my dues on time. I hadn't broken a rule. But when I emailed the board, the only response I got was, refer to Section 4A of the Community Code. That section, as I discovered, was about board discretion. In other words, they didn't need a reason. I started asking around. Quietly at first. That's when I learned 3 other neighbors had their pool cards deactivated too. And all of them had one thing in common. They'd recently questioned HOA policies. This wasn't random. It was retaliation. When I emailed Marjorie directly, she replied coldly, "We reserve the right to restrict amenities for non-compliance or disruptive behavior. Your access will be reinstated when reviewed by the board." Disruptive behavior? All I'd done was ask where our rising HOA fees were going. Apparently, curiosity was a crime. From there, things escalated. I requested to see financial records, a homeowner's legal right. The board refused, claiming the documents were confidential. A week later, I got a new violation notice, this time for my front yard plants, which they had approved months earlier. They were sending a message: stay quiet or we'll make life miserable. But instead of backing down, I dug deeper. Late nights, public records, archived financial statements. What I found made my blood run cold. Unexplained expenses, missing funds, administrative costs that didn't match any actual work in the neighborhood. Thousands of dollars unaccounted for. I wasn't just locked out of my pool anymore, I was locked out of the truth. And that truth was about to explode.
The next HOA meeting was packed. Normally 5 or 6 people showed up. That night, nearly 50 residents crowded into the clubhouse, faces tight with tension. I stood near the back, clutching a folder full of evidence. Marjorie called the meeting to order like nothing was wrong. But when I raised my hand and asked about the missing funds, the room erupted. People began shouting questions. Who authorized the payments? Why were we being fined so heavily? Why had residents been banned from the pool without explanation? Marjorie's composure cracked.
She accused me of spreading false rumors and undermining community harmony. Then, in front of everyone, she announced that I was being fined for defamation of the board. That's when I knew this wasn't going to be solved quietly. The next day, I sent my evidence to the local news station. Within hours, a reporter named Kara called me back. She'd covered HOA corruption before and said our story sounded like something worth investigating. 2 days later, she showed up. Camera crew, microphone, and all. The neighbors gathered, whispering nervously as she interviewed me at the locked pool gate. I held up my access card, blinking red for the camera. This, I said, is how they control us. The story aired that evening, and overnight, everything changed. The HOA's inbox exploded. So did mine. Dozens of residents came forward with stories of threats, fines, and withheld privileges. The news segment went viral, and suddenly our small neighborhood became the face of HOA abuse across the state. Within a week, the State Housing Authority opened an investigation. The board was legally required to release their records, and that's when the real nightmare began for them. The auditors discovered missing funds stretching back 3 years, tens of thousands of dollars categorized under maintenance and administration. Several invoices led to shell companies owned by Marjorie's husband. When confronted, she denied everything, claiming it was a clerical mix-up. But when the state investigators arrived with subpoenas, the entire board started turning on each other. Neighbors, who once avoided eye contact with me, now stopped by to thank me. "You did what we were all too scared to do," one woman said, tears in her eyes. But the fight wasn't over. While the investigation continued, Marjorie doubled down, sending cease and desist letters to residents who spoke to the media. She even accused me of trespassing when I walked by the pool during filming. The pressure was relentless. Anonymous notes appeared in my mailbox. "Stop digging before you regret it." My car tires were slashed one night. The intimidation was real, and it was working. But Kara, the reporter, refused to back down. She aired a follow-up segment titled, "The HOA Scandal Deepens," exposing the intimidation tactics. That story sealed Marjorie's fate. The county prosecutor got involved. Subpoenas turned into arrests, and the gated silence that had ruled our neighborhood for years finally cracked open.
The day of the emergency HOA meeting, the clubhouse overflowed. News crews lined the sidewalk. For the first time, Marjorie wasn't sitting at the head of the table. She was standing off to the side, pale and trembling, flanked by her lawyer. The state investigator read aloud the findings. Unauthorized use of HOA funds, illegal restriction of amenities, document tampering, retaliation against homeowners. Each charge landed like a hammer. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Marjorie tried to defend herself, blaming clerical confusion and rogue accounting errors, but the evidence was overwhelming. When they projected the fake invoices on the screen, each one signed by her husband, the room fell silent. It was over. The HOA board was immediately dissolved pending state supervision. Marjorie resigned on the spot, tears streaming down her face. The same woman who once ruled every meeting with icy authority now looked like a ghost of herself. The crowd erupted into applause, not out of cruelty, but out of sheer relief. Years of frustration, fear, and silence finally ended. For me, it was bittersweet. I didn't feel victory, just exhaustion. But somewhere deep down, I knew this was a turning point, not just for us, but for anyone who'd ever been bullied by those hiding behind HOA power. Since then, I've heard from homeowners across the country who saw our story and decided to fight back in their own neighborhoods. That's the real victory. Because this was never just about a pool. It was about standing up to a system built on intimidation and silence. So when people ask me if it was worth it, I tell them yes, because I still live here. I still walk past that gate every morning, and every time I hear it unlock, I'm reminded that sometimes justice doesn't come from power. It comes from persistence. If you live under an HOA, remember, you have rights, you have a voice, and silence only protects those who abuse power. Because sometimes all it takes to expose corruption is getting locked out of your own pool.
If you enjoyed seeing justice served, make sure you hit subscribe, because the next HOA nightmare might just be wilder than this one. Don't miss it.